Imagine for a moment picking up the phone to call a government agency. But you're not calling to, frantically pay a bill. You're calling to learn how you can discharge it.
Right. Not paid off in the usual way.
Exactly. In a really specific, non-traditional way that the caller, Christopher, he believed could actually nullify debt just with his signature.
Sounds almost like fiction, doesn't it?
It really does. But today, we're diving deep into a real-life phone call that explores exactly that.
It's a fascinating exchange. You've got the caller with these very unique financial and legal theories, and then you have this IRS agent showing remarkable patience, really.
Our source for this deep dive, it comes straight from a YouTube transcript. The title's pretty provocative. Phone call to IRS, how to pay bills with just my signature, how to do it, a A4V from IRS.
A4V, acceptance for value. That's key here.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to unpack the caller's, let's say, distinct worldview on debt and finance, especially this A4V idea, and then we'll contrast it directly with the very practical, step-by-step guidance the IRS agent gave him.
Yeah, we want to pull out the core insights, help you understand both perspectives here. We're not taking sides, just, laying out the information as it happened in the call.
Okay, so let's start by stepping into the world of this caller, Christopher, of the Fleming family, as he identified himself, and his, incredibly unconventional approach to handling debt.
So what was he actually trying to do on this call?
Well, his goal was pretty specific. He wanted to figure out how to, quote, create a money order out of the bill.
Out of the bill itself.
Yeah, for a debt he had with HSBC and also for a court fine. It was from the Municipal Services Bureau, something like a speeding ticket or maybe driving without a license. He wasn't sure which.
Okay, so he's got these two different debts he wants to handle this way.
Right, and he'd actually already tried this method with HSBC, but his attempts were, in his words, completely ignored.
Ignored, not rejected, just ignored.
Yeah, and then to make things worse for him, HSBC sold the debt to a third-party collection agency.
Ah, okay. So that attempt clearly didn't work out.
Not at all. But what's really interesting is how detailed he gets describing how he made this, quote, money order.
Right. Let's get into that. What did he actually write on it?
Okay, so he'd write phrases like money order for money, pay to Municipal Services Bureau. But crucially, he left the amount blank.
Blank. Okay, that's unusual for any kind of payment instrument.
Very. He'd cross out the amount due on the original bill, initial it, and then sign as authorized representative, adding by Christopher Fleming, the all capital.
Go. Authorized representative and the all caps name. That sounds like it ties into those sovereign citizen type ideas.
Exactly. And this is where that A4V, acceptance for value concept really comes in for him. He believed his signature in this specific way transformed the bill itself into a valid payment.
A kind of financial alchemy, almost.
You could say that, and it gets even more specific on the back.
Oh, what did he put there?
He'd write, for deposit to U.S. Treasury, for credit to Municipal Services Bureau. And instead of an account number, he used a case number.
To the U.S. Treasury. For a municipal fine. That's quite a leap.
It is. And he seemed to genuinely believe that the IRS's Criminal Investigation Division, the CID, would somehow figure out the blank amount and then discount the remittance, like they'd fill in the blanks and accept it.
Wow. Okay, so that explains why he was calling the IRS, even about a municipal fine. He thought they were the ones who processed these things.
Precisely. Which brings us to the underlying philosophy driving all this. It definitely touches on concepts you hear in those sovereign citizen or redemption movement circles.
Yeah, like the straw man idea.
Exactly. He explained that Christopher Fleming, the name in all caps, isn't him, the living man. It's a legal fiction or a corporation created when he was born.
Right. And he, the living man, Christopher of the Fleming family, is just the authorized representative for that fiction.
Yeah.
With full power of attorney.
That's his framework. The straw man is the entity that incurs the debt. Not him personally. He's just managing its affairs, so to speak.
And that distinction is absolutely fundamental to his entire approach to these debts.
It is. And then there's the birth certificate part. How did he connect that?
Ah, yes. This is a core element in many of these theories. He believed that back in 1933, birth certificates were sold to insure the national debt.
Sold?
Yeah, that's the belief.
Yeah.
And that they were printed on bond paper because, in his view, they are a bond.
Okay.
So this underpins his whole philosophy. If the government used his birth certificate, effectively his future potential, as collateral for debt, and if, as he also believed, there is no money,
meaning like no gold-backed currency, that sort of thing.
Exactly. No tangible, redeemable currency.
Yeah.
Then His methods, like using his Social Security number, which he called his Treasury Direct Account number, are the real lawful way to discharge these obligations tied to his straw man.
So he's not paying debt with jet, like Federal Reserve notes. He's using his supposed Treasury account to set off the debt.
That's the idea. He sees himself, or rather his straw man account, as having value at the Treasury, which can be used to settle these public debts.
So if I'm getting the gist here, he thinks his birth essentially created credit for the government, making him or his straw man a creditor, not a debtor.
You've got it. That's the core belief driving this whole attempt to discharge debts rather than pay them.
Wow, okay.
And he references things like HJR 192 and Public Law 310. These are real historical legislative items, but they're often, let's say, creatively interpreted in these circles.
HJR 192, that's the 1933 resolution about going off the gold standard, right?
Correct. And proponents of these theories often claim it proves that debts can only be discharged, not truly paid, because there's no lawful money. It's a very common, though widely disputed interpretation.
Okay, I see. So all this leads to his frustration then. He genuinely believes he's offering a valid form of settlement.
Exactly. He complains that creditors only want cash or credit cards, and they refuse his remittances, which to him feels unlawful, like they're breaking the law by refusing his form of payment.
So with HSBC ignoring him, the debt collector's calling, he decides to go straight to the source, or who he thinks is the source, the IRS.
Which brings us to the call itself. And right away, there's this issue of identity.
Yeah, that became a big sticking point. The IRS agents, naturally, need to verify who they're talking to. Standard procedure, name, date of birth, address, phone number.
But Christopher pushes back hard on identifying as Christopher Fleming.
Right. He keeps insisting, I am Christopher of the Fleming family. He says Christopher Fleming is the legal fiction.
And the date of birth thing.
Oh, that was something else. When asked to confirm his birth date, he says, and I quote, I can't actually swear to that because I wasn't counting.
Because he wasn't counting at his own birth. Okay.
Yeah. And then he mentions changing his phone number multiple times because of a lot of stalkers.
So just getting through basic verification is a challenge right from the start.
A huge challenge. And while they're going back and forth on this identity stuff, the IRS agents look up Christopher Fleming in their system.
And what do they find?
Well, they find that this Christopher Fleming apparently hasn't filed federal income taxes for like 7 years?
Ooh, okay. That adds another layer.
Definitely. They specifically mentioned 2009 and 2010, noting there was taxable unemployment income those years that likely required filing.
Hmm.
And they also find an outstanding debt from tax year 2006, about $2,169, potentially rising to almost $2,800 by April 1st.
So he calls them to ask how to discharge other debts, and they find he owes them money and hasn't filed in years.
Pretty much. And Christopher's immediate reaction to this news?
Let me guess it wasn't, oh dear, I need to sort that out.
Not quite. His interpretation was that the IRS must be upset because he hadn't extended credit to them yet, meaning paid his taxes using his discharge method, and that's why they weren't helping him with his HSBC and municipal remittances.
Wow, okay. That's a unique take on owing back taxes.
It certainly is. So the call is getting pretty complex here.
Yeah, but eventually an agent named Miss Lumpkin manages to cut through some of the confusion and provide some actual concrete information.
Yes, she really tried to bring things back to IRS procedure. First, she addresses his idea about the CID.
Right, the Criminal Investigation Division he thought would process his blank remittance.
She clarifies that CID does not take phone calls from the public. Full stop.
Okay, practical point number one.
Then she gets into the nitty-gritty of how the IRS actually does expect remittances, specifically money orders, to be handled. And this directly contradicts Christopher's whole method.
Let's hear it. What are the actual IRS rules she laid out?
Okay, she said the money order must be paid to the order of United States Treasury. Written out completely, not abbreviated.
Makes sense.
It needs Christopher Fleming's name and address on it, a daytime phone number, and his Social Security number, preferably with the dashes.
Standard stuff for tracking payments.
Right. And crucially, the specific tax year, like 2006, and the tax form number, 1040, just the numbers, she specified, must be clearly written on the front of the remittance.
Okay, on the front, not the back like he was doing.
Correct. And the absolute key point, the amount must be filled in.
Uh-huh. There it is. Directly refuting his leave it blank theory.
Completely. She also mentioned the back of the remittance is reserved for IRS use only, and no postage stamp is needed on the money order itself, which was another piece of disinformation he'd mentioned.
So basically, his entire method for creating the money order was wrong according to IRS procedure. The blank amount, the writing on the back where you put the info, all of it.
Pretty much all of it, yeah. And this likely explains why HSBC just ignored his attempt. It wasn't a recognizable or processable financial instrument.
It simply didn't meet the basic requirements.
Exactly. She even gave him a specific mailing address for sending in those missing 2009 and 2010 tax forms. Internal Revenue Service, a CSS stop 7611, P.O. Box 24017, Fresno, California 93779.
Very specific instructions.
But then she made another absolutely critical distinction, one that really dismantled his whole idea of a universal discharge method.
Which was?
She told him point blank, the IRS does not process remittances from municipal offices or other private creditors like HSBC.
Okay, so his whole reason for calling them about the court fine and the HSBC debt was based on a false premise.
Completely. She told him he has to send those payments directly to the municipal office or the collection agency.
Right. Deal with each creditor separately.
And more than that, he needs to ask those specific creditors how they want their payments formatted because, as she said, not everybody's system is the same.
That makes perfect sense. Different billing systems, different requirements. It directly refutes his belief in one single method for everything.
Absolutely. She also shut down his idea that the IRS might settle his other remittances if he paid his taxes.
Oh.
No quid pro quo.
So no universal discharge, no IRS processing for third parties, no settling deals. Just pay your taxes directly to the IRS and pay your other debts directly to those creditors according to their rules.
That was the clear message. And finally, regarding his IRS debt, she explained that once his payment is processed, the IRS will send a letter showing the payment amount and proof of discharge.
But discharge in the standard sense, meaning the debt is paid and cleared from their books.
Precisely. Receipt of payment. Not some kind of abstract set-off using his signature and a blank money order.
Okay, so reflecting on this whole exchange, what are the big takeaways here?
Well, first and foremost, it just starkly highlights this huge information divide, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You have Christopher operating based on this alternative legal and financial framework derived from, as he put it, disinformation floating around.
And then you have the IRS agent representing the established practical reality of how government agencies and financial systems actually work. It's like two different languages.
Yeah, a real clash of realities.
And it really boils down to the definition of words like payment and discharge.
Right. For Christopher, discharge means this A4V set-off process using the straw man account. For the IRS, discharge means they've received valid funds settling the account. Completely different concepts.
One is about abstract settlement, the other about tangible payment following specific rules.
And you have to acknowledge the agent's patience here. Miss Lumpkin, especially.
Remarkable, really. She stayed very clear, very direct, correcting the misinformation point by point, even while Christopher kept reasserting his own unique interpretations.
It shows the challenge frontline staff face when dealing with these complex, deeply held, but ultimately non-standard beliefs about law and finance.
Definitely. And I think at the end of the day, this whole deep dive just underscores how incredibly important it is to verify information, right? Especially when it involves legal and financial obligations.
Couldn't agree more. Knowing how to distinguish between official sources and procedures versus let's just say, unofficial or misleading theories floating around online. It's crucial.
So, yeah, we've really unpacked a truly unique conversation here. We explored this very specific, non-traditional take on debt, rooted in ideas like legal fictions and A4V.
And contrasted it directly with the clear, established guidelines from the Internal Revenue Service. It just hammers home the need for accurate, verifiable information when you're dealing with your financial responsibilities.
It really does. And maybe this deep dive leaves you, our listener, with a question to ponder. In this age where there's just so much information, so many theories swirling around, how do you go about verifying the information you encounter? Particularly when it's about something as vital as your own financial or legal obligations.
What really stands out to you as the biggest lesson, maybe, from Christopher's call to the IRS? Something definitely worth thinking about.